nobody ever gonna put us out. We glow up and the lights go down. Bright light, better get your blindfold. If you take it off, keep your eyes closed. Supernova shooting through your backbone. M87 golden halo. Even in the pitch black, we know where we are. Even with no sunshine, burning like a star. Fuse hot, lit like a spot. Can't stop what you start. This light in the
Ayubowan Kamustaka, and welcome everyone to Beyond the Northern Wall, your weekly talk show with me, your host, Kayla Malari. I'm doing the thing that I always do, and I'm dual streaming here on YouTube as well as on TikTok. So hello TikTok, and hello people of YouTube. Welcome back. Now I know I say this is a weekly show, and last week there was not a show, but that's because life happens and I was working at the time when I usually stream. But I am back this week with episode 4 of season 2. And this week we're going to be talking about a subject that was actually proposed to me by one of our patron commanders. So if you don't know what a patron commander is, and those words mean nothing to you, we have a Patreon. The Core Dance Crew has a Patreon. You can find us on Patreon. Just type in the Core Dance Crew. And as little as $2 a month, you can subscribe and become a patron and be part of our Discord, or become one of the commander tiers. And in the commander tier, I usually touch base with the commanders in our Discord, and I ask them input on what I should do in the show, or I'll ask them questions about other stuff. They're really great people also too. It's just a great community that talks about anime and books and comic books and movies and TV and all that jazz. So I reached out to the commanders and I asked, hey, I have some thoughts for like other episodes, but I need an idea for like episode 4. And for episode 4, who is it? Their username is Someone Stole My Shoes. So thank you to that, our patron. Oh my god, why are you playing? No! Sorry, I just started playing. That scared me because I didn't know where it was coming from. When Demon Slayer attacks. That scared me too. I was so nervous. Anyways, someone stole my shoes, which is the username of our Patreon, because I don't want to give out real names, suggested that we talk about tropes. And so I started like running off of that idea of tropes, themes, and the story in between, because I bring that up a lot. Now, if you don't know me, and this is your first time here, thank you everyone in TikTok, thank you everyone on YouTube. If this is your first time here, my hair fell. I thought it was a bug. I love to talk about stories. I am a writer. I write my own stuff. I've written my own stuff for all my life. And I write a lot of the stories and the scripts for Core. And clearly with Core Dance Crew, we create storylines, vast storylines. We have the Beyond the Northern Wall trilogy. And then we had Across the Multiverse and everything. And that was all co-written with me and my soulmate, Sonali Samarasena, the other co-founder of the Core Dance Crew. Now, so stories, and on top of that, I'm a huge reader. I love reading, and I'm a cinephile. I love movies, and I love television shows. So storytelling is the foundation of who I am. So of course, tropes and themes and the story in between is a big deal with how I view things and how I understand things. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, what I've been also doing in season 2 is I always seem to pair a drink with whatever we're talking about. I did that for the first episode, and I've kind of just been doing that with episodes around. So today I have what I've lovingly described for this stream as the cliche. As you can see, it's very pretty, it's very California, and it's actually a very common drink. But if you want the recipe for this, it's very yummy. It's fruity and refreshing and very yummy. If you want the recipe for all the drinks that I do on the stream, you have to become a patron, because I share it with the patrons, and they're really great. For purposes of today, this beautiful sunsetty drink as it sunsets outside my window on this California day is called the cliche. So, cheers! Cheers! If you want to join me for a drink during these streams, you are more than welcome to. Fresh. All right. So, tropes and themes. let's talk about. First and foremost, and I had to write notes for this because my thoughts were all over the place. So I had to make sure I got everything in order. So first and foremost, what is a trope? Because you can say a lot of things. There's tropes, there's cliches, there's running themes. What are they? So a trope, by definition of Masterclass Online, is a trope in literary terms, is a plot device or character attribute that is used so commonly in the genre that it's seen as commonplace or conventional. For example, a trope in superhero stories is a villain who wants to take over a world. Now, when you say it, it sounds normal. You're like, yeah, that happens all the time. Exactly. That's what a trope is. A trope is familiarity. Now, the difference between a trope and a cliche is the word cliched means stereotyped and trite. In other words, dull and uninteresting, mostly. A trope is like a song in a familiar key. You may not know all the words, but you can probably sing along with the chorus. A cliche, on the other hand, is hoary and old. And hoary is an Hoary, which means like hack, which just means repetitive. That's not my definition. That was the online definition. These are the definitions from masterclass.com, which is true. So cliches, a lot of the time, when you want to describe a cliche, it's very cliche for the superhero to the superhero movie to wear, the spangled banner, red, white, and blue. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, because we like Captain America, and we like All Might and all that stuff. But it's very cliche for them to wear those colors, because it's kind of been like, yeah, we get it. Like Superman and all that stuff, we get it. You wear the blue and the red, we get it, Again, not necessarily bad, but all that jazz. Now, a trope is something that we kind of adhere to. Why do we even like tropes, and why do we like themes? Well, there's a comfort in familiarity, and that happens in a couple of ways. One is recognizing the story and its predictability. Sometimes it can be tired, other times it can be comforting. So when I say tired is when it's like overused, and yes, there can be tropes that are overused a couple of times. The hero trope is overused. Marvel movies, hero movies, rom-coms. You have a hero who saves the world. Is it overused? Yes. Can you predict exactly what's going to happen? Yes, of course you can. But I'm going to be honest, I don't go into a superhero movie, especially a Marvel one, expecting the hero to lose. I don't want him to lose. Now, if it follows the storyline, and if it's progressing the characters, after a certain amount of stories have been told and the hero loses, yes. Infinity War, the heroes lost at the end of that, because it was the act 2 of an act 3 storyline. So of course they can't win at the end of that. But if I go to the other, like if I went to Iron Man, the very first Iron Man, and Iron Man didn't win, I'd be a little thrown, because I'd be like, what a weird story for you to tell me about a hero who didn't win. Because then I'm not going to think he's a hero. Then that trope goes out the window. He's not a hero anymore. He's just a loser. So there are tropes that have been used over and over again, and yes, they can become a little predictable, but that doesn't necessarily mean bad. There's comfort in kind of knowing where you're going from there. Also, we like similar stories. I don't know about you, but like themes and genres and tropes, I like certain ones. I love action. I love action movies, and I love action stories. And so if I know it's action, I'm going to go watch that movie. I'm going to go read that manga. I'm going to watch that anime. I'm going to adhere to it. But also within there are certain tropes that seem familiar. The details may change, but the overarching theme or trope help us find the genre of the stories that we like. For example, and this is the example I wrote down, if you like the dystopian theme, you have an established taste for a dystopian theme, you have a wide array of things to choose from for dystopia. But maybe you want to get a little bit more specific, because there are a lot of different ones. Sci-fi dystopia is very different from fantasy dystopia, is very different from YA and fiction dystopia. Do you know what I mean? It's very different from video game dystopia. Because I can love Brave New World, but it's very different from BioShock. You know what I mean? They're not the same thing at all. So tropes help you get a little bit more specific. Like the reluctant hero. If you like the reluctant hero in a dystopian setting, you can read the Hunger Games and the Divergent series, because they're similar enough that they fall under what you like, but they're different enough so you're not exactly reading the same exact story. And that's why we like tropes. That's why we like themes and not necessarily cliches. But that's also where the story in between makes a difference, because we want the same themes, but we don't want the same actual things to happen. Themes versus things. The details are the ones that need to change and can really make or break a story. But we like what we like, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, question is, can tropes get tired? And what I said is no. You can repeat a trope and it doesn't get tired, but yes, there are tropes that can get tired. Trini actually said it perfectly in the chat. She said that's the reason why we all have our comfort shows, familiarity. But can you get tired with the familiar? So I had to write this all down because I had these thoughts and they were swirling around, and as I drink my beautiful cliche, I won't be able to keep them all straight. So, can tropes get tired? Absolutely. Let me bring my computer over here. Do you like my case for my computer? That's my laptop. Okay. So, if the story lacks unique details, fleshed out characters, or proper world building, then the trope and the theme get tired out, and it becomes boring, which is that's general in storytelling. Again, as someone who loves storytelling, oh, sorry, YouTube, I messed up my camera. Find me, Cam. There we go. They can get boring. So the details make the difference. I personally feel like YA and romance novels can easily get sucked into this problem. Now, these are all just personal preference. I'm not saying that this is exactly what it is, and I'm not saying it's a certain way. This is as someone who's an avid reader, as someone who works in a bookstore, who is in tune with what's on Book Talk and whatnot, and someone who has read a lot outside of any specific genre. I read a lot of genres. Also, someone's a writer. Also, someone who loves television shows, a wide array. Also, someone who loves anime and manga. Also, someone who likes movies. Also, someone who's in the arts like dance and art history. This is where I'm drawing from. So these are all just personal preference for me. If you have a different perspective, by all means, I always ask that you tell me in the comments, especially there on YouTube. Comment on this live afterwards and tell me how you think about these things. But I personally feel like young adult fiction and romance novels can easily get sucked into the problem of having a tired out trope. It's all preference, of course, but it can be glaringly obvious in these genres. I personally did not find or understand the appeal of 50 Shades of Grey because of its projected storyline. And after it became big and huge, it became massive, I remember listening to it on the radio going to work. They were talking about it on the Ryan Seacrest show. A slew of similar, what I call cookie cutter BDSM books came out that all fell into the same fold. Now, I say that with total respect for the BDSM culture, because they have their own culture and they have their problems with 50 Shades of Grey, because 50 Shades of Grey was written as a BDSM novel without any knowledge of what BDSM culture and community was. So I'm going to throw that out there. If you're going to talk about something, especially, not talk about something, if you're going to write about something and make it a national bestseller, make sure it's something we'll get there. Anyways, after 50 Shades of Grey came out, a bunch of other books similar to 50 Shades of Grey came out, and they were all the same. They were literally just you could have just changed the name of the main characters to Anastasia and Christian Grey, and it would have been the same story. It was all the same story. And I thought that was a disservice to the romance genre, because I was there are other books in the romance genre that are really, really good that actually deal with this subject matter a lot better, but people keep going back to the same one because 50 Shades made this trope and this theme, and then it got tired out. And 50 Shades itself was the fan fiction product of Twilight. I hope you all knew that. 50 Shades of Grey was a fan fiction of Twilight, which fueled pardon the pun, Twilight fueled a revamped love for vampire love. That's what it is. So then I put this as a side note, but this is my segue into talking about tropes and how they deal with storytelling. The theme of vampires and how it's changed. And I say this as someone who who does love vampires. So, but not the way some of y'all love vampires. Let me just read this off and then we'll dissect it. Vampires have always been a popular theme, but the trope itself has changed depending on the storyline. If you go back all the way to the beginning, you have the classic Dracula depicting vampires as the iconic monster in a monster movie. So when vampires first came through, you know what I mean? When you have the first Dracula, and I was about to say Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, not Dracula. When Dracula first came out, he was a monster in a monster movie. He was over the top, and he was so extravagant, but he was a monster. There was like, he had this seduction method about him, which has always been inherent to vampires. He would seduce, but he himself wasn't like he was magnetic, but it wasn't so much like seducing in a sexy way. It was like seducing in I'm going to eat you way, which, you know, like, that's not sexy. Like, wanting to turn someone into a corpse is like, it's not hot. But his seduction was part of Dracula's powers, all of his powers, you know, like anti-Christian and all that stuff. But he was always a monster movie. He was a monster, just like the Mummy was a monster back in the day. Just like you had the werewolf in Paris, and you had the creature from the Black Lagoon, or you had Frankenstein, like classic monster movies. Dracula was originally there. And then we got Anne Rice, loving, beautiful, rest in peace Anne Rice, bringing in the luxury indulgence of the undead, showing how aloof and twisted they can be while being enticing and turning vampires, in my opinion, mainstream sexy for the first time. Now, there were vampires before that in movies and other stories that were like playing on the sexiness, but I feel like Anne Rice really made it mainstream. Just like there's so many good anime, but westernized mainstream anime really became big with AOT, and I will stand by that. But it doesn't say that AOT is the best, and it doesn't say that it's better than the ones that came before it, but there are certain pieces of work that kind of just take things to a new level. That's what Anne Rice did with the Vampire Lestat, Interview with a Vampire. Like, Lestat became synonymous with knowing vampire lore, which is so crazy because, like, I watched that happen. I mean, I wasn't around when the book was first published, but I remember watching it become bigger and more prominent with my friends who were reading it, and then going off from there. And it was dark. Like, her vampires weren't sweet. They weren't cute. Her vampires were still very much dangerous, or very much representations of demons and devils and like bad guys. Like, not like, oh, they're bad, but like they're sexy bad. No, they're sexy, but they're evil. Like, that's evil. So you got that with Anne Rice. Then, with the revolution of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, we got monster vampires back again, but now they're seen and modernized, and the monsters have integrated into modern day. It's no longer gothic sensationalism that you got in Anne Rice and Dracula, but they're right here walking among us, closer than we think. And it was super metaphorical when it came to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Now, I'm a huge Buffy fan. Like, I literally just finished watching an episode of Buffy just now. Huge Buffy fan. And I really respect how a lot of the vampires in it were very metaphorical. And does Buffy end up falling in love with a vampire? Yes. Are vampires depicted as like sexy and enticing? Yes. But they're also never not monsters. And that's a big theme that runs in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That they're monsters. Like, what made Angel different was that he was a vampire with a soul. But vampire wasn't like... Vampire was monster, but he had a soul, which made him a little bit better. But it was Buffy always fighting against the monster side of him, because the monster side wasn't good. It wasn't like cute. Again, it wasn't a good thing to have. It was a bad thing to have. Which is what made Buffy getting together with Spike in season 6 really bad, because he was a vampire that was like reformed villain trope, but he didn't have a soul, so he was still evil, and so he represented evil, monster. And then then Twilight and the Vampire Diaries and Vampire Academy. I don't know if anyone remembers that. Vampire Academy overtook the YA book genre, and vampires were now brooding mysteries to fall in love with. Having your blood sucked wasn't scary anymore because of these books. It became an intimate and connecting experience, and it turned into a PG way to have sex without explicitly having sex. So it was a way to have a physical connection with the character without having to get into graphic descriptions and without having to break like the purity thing that happens when you get into vampire stories. But it, and it's weird because I feel like, and I read all of Twilight. I read and I went to the midnight premieres for it, and I hated every moment of the book, but I read every last second of the book. So Stephenie Meyer still won. But what I didn't like about Twilight was that she tried to depict like the scariness of getting your blood sucked by someone who looks like a person but is not a person, is a monster. But it just came off in a sense where now people, and I remember people who fell in love with vampires at the time, they're like, oh my gosh, they're so sweet, and like, and they're like, they need to be saved, and oh my gosh, they're so brooding and mysterious. They're old men and women who suck your blood. Like, that'd be weird, and that doesn't feel good. If you've ever had your blood taken at the hospital and you're like, I don't like needles, yeah, you shouldn't like vampires either. That's worse. I promise you, teeth are worse than needles. And then I loved it because then Supernatural came around. And they made fun of that genre. They made fun of people who thought vampires were like hot and sexy and all that stuff. And they're like, vampires are terrifying. They're monsters that kill you. And like, they don't kill you easily. They kill you slowly. And like, they'll just like keep you around because you make blood all the time. So like, what a torturous way to die. And so they brought back the monster aspect. So you see how vampires is the overarching trope and the overarching theme. But because of the story in between, it changes how you view vampires. They became cool, and then they became not, and then became dangerous but enticing, and then they became like horrifying metaphors, and then they became mainstream and everyone wants to be a vampire. And I'm like, in all honesty, a vampire should not be strong. That's why Dracula was never like super strong. I mean, he was stronger than the normal man, but even then I think that's wrong. Because if you're a creature living solely on blood, like, you're highly lacking in a lot of like calcium for bones. Yeah. You got a lot of iron and vitamin D, but you probably will be a little sickly if you're just purely going off of blood. So, but like, vampires were strong and like, I don't know, built. This seemed weird to me. But you see how it goes up and down. Now, within those storylines, what do we like? I like Dracula and I like Buffy. I loved those. I love the classic Dracula book, and I love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I even have the other seasons that were made, the comic book versions. It got weird. I get Anne Rice, and I read Twilight, but I don't understand the appeal of vampires on that line of thinking, like the sexy side of vampires. I just don't. I don't think vampires are sexy. I think they're scary because blood sucking. But did I ship Buffy and Bangel? Like Spike and Buffy? I shipped it in the context of what was happening when he had a soul. But I understood that there was a problem with that relationship. And I also understood there was a problem with Buffy and Angel. Did I ship it? Yes, but not like... I shipped it in there, in where it was at. And that's something we need to talk about too. Shipping within the confines of what it is, and not bringing your ship outside and like applying it to your whole life. Did I ship, what are they called? Bedward? Is that what Bella and Edward's ship name is? Bedward. Ugly. No, I did not. I thought that was weird. I thought that like he's like 200-year-old old man who fell in love with a 16-year-old that was like, and here's the problem too, because within the Twilight story, the other trope that was in there was what's it called? Oh, there's a trope in there. Hold on, I had it pulled up. The trope in there is falls in love with the unnoticed. Oh, I hate that trope. And I hate it because every time there's falls in love with the unnoticed, the unnoticed is always described as like really beautiful or really talented or really skilled or secretly handsome or secretly gorgeous. And I'm like, but they were like bullied or ignored in their community, and then the main person or the really amazing person falls in love with that person. So it's like Edward, who's like popular and hot and mysterious, fell in love with Bella, who was like shy and she was the new girl and nobody liked her, but she had perfect skin and she was beautiful and she had these plump lips and like this dark hair and she was so mysterious. But no one, he fell in love with the unnoticed girl. What do you mean unnoticed? You can't. What? Like, as someone who lived through high school as well, and I know I looked crazy in high school. Like, there were days where you can be noticed and days you couldn't be noticed. But, like, you didn't not notice someone who was beautiful and talented. That's just stupid. And it's weird when people do that too. They're like, nobody noticed me. And I'm like, get over yourself. Yes, they did. You just want a sad storyline to fuel your story. So that's why I didn't like Twilight, because of another trope that was in there. And that's my segue into what tropes are. Tropes can make or break overarching themes, just as cliches can sneak in and ruin them. But it all kind of depends. I didn't like Twilight because of the falls in love with the unnoticed. Sometimes that works, I'll admit, but I hate when someone is described as undeniably beautiful, but for some reason they're ignored and bullied. That doesn't make sense. I believe in suspension of belief when it comes to storytelling, especially in books, movies, and television shows. But there are times where it goes a little bit too far, and if it's too far out of reality to make it make sense in an understandable context, then it's not suspension of belief anymore. It's like pure fantasy. And I'm not saying pure fantasy as in fantasy the genre. I like the fantasy genre, but it's fantasy in the sense where it's just, now you're just making something up for the sake of your story. Which is where a lot of stories fail. You can't just make something up. Just like you can't just make your character do something that would be out of norm for them just because you need that thing to be done in the storyline. So that's the difference between good and bad writing, right? Just in general. And so that's my very sloppy and convoluted way of segueing into tropes that we love but can be done really wrong. Now again, these tropes that I'm going to give you are tropes that I love, and the stories that I think did well with them, and then stories that I think didn't do too well with them. But again, you can agree or not, and I want to see you guys sound off you guys are talking great in the chat right now, and same with TikTok. If you like them or you agree with me, let me know. If you disagree with me, let me know too, because who doesn't love a good debate? Quick little drink. Ready? Okay, what's my time? Cool. All right. So one of my favorite tropes, hands down. It's going to seem general, but it's a favorite trope. It's what you all love too. Hero saves the world, the chosen one, and the reluctant hero. I'm a big sucker for those. I like superhero movies. I like Marvel comic books and DC comic books. I love shonen anime. Like, duh, who doesn't love hero saves the world? I also love the chosen one, and I love the reluctant hero. Times where I liked it and I thought it was really good, the MCEU as a whole. And I am going to say that because I don't believe DC as a whole has done it well. I think parts of DC has, but like there's some big issues. But I think the MCEU as a whole has done that very well. Not to say that I think all of the comic books of Marvel have done it well. That's the difference. Another one, I think Teen Titans did it really well as a show. They were really good at doing the whole hero saves the world, reluctant hero bit without it seeming contrived, which in general, I think Teen Titans as a cartoon was so much more advanced for its timeline. And I think as much as we still love it, if it aired nowadays with shows like Adventure Time, Rick and Morty, Steven Universe that have come out, Bob's Burgers, Family Guy, where adult themes are a little bit more accepted, I think Teen Titans could have gone farther with that, which is why people love Young Justice. And we did Young Justice dirty. I mean, yes, I know it's still going, but we did it dirty in its first couple seasons. Also, the Hunger Games did the reluctant hero really well with Katniss. Now, that is debatable. Some people would not agree with me with Katniss being the reluctant hero as a good form of it. I think it was written really well. I think she was a perfectly reluctant hero because there's so many things that people disliked about her. And that's really what a reluctant hero would be. They wouldn't be likable because they didn't want to be the hero. They weren't Steve Rogers volunteering to go to war to save the world. You know what I mean? So they don't have this, pure Braveheart mindset. They literally are kind of a little selfish, and then they were thrust into the role of saving the world, and out of this weird obligation that's probably fueled by my backstory. Yeah, I guess I'll do that. And then also Percy Jackson. Oh, which, by the way, can we just all get super excited that they casted the Percy Jackson series, and all three of them look fantastic, and I can't wait. But Percy Jackson did The Chosen One and Hero Saves the World really, really well. They kind of touch on a different version of the reluctant hero, only because Percy was ready to step up as the hero of the prophecy, but because it was like teetering so many times, they're like, is he the person? Is he the hero of the prophecy? Is he not? Like, that's where reluctant hero got played around with. But him as chosen one and Hero Saves the World, like, he was great, and he was a different hero than Katniss was, which is why it shows you can do two different versions of it, and it makes or breaks the story. I just thought the Percy Jackson series, I loved it. Who was saying, yeah, Trini says she did it because she had to. That was for Hunger Games. Now, times where I liked the story, but if you delve too deep into it, there are major issues. This might cause some disagreement. And it will cause some disagreement with me too, because I had to think about these, and I was like, oh, a lot of these are my favorite, and now it's kind of like, maybe they shouldn't be my favorite. I need a drink for this. Number 1, Naruto. Yep, Naruto's on the list. He's not on the good side of the list. He's kind of on the bad side of the list. And not Naruto as a person, but the story itself. This is from someone who's a big Naruto fan. I love the anime Naruto. I do. I think it was so much fun. I thought it was creative. I do like the characters. But if you get into the details and the nitty gritty of a lot of what happened, I feel like they jumped the shark a lot in Naruto. And they did the worst versions of tropes. So first and foremost, they are guilty of botching a couple of tropes. They botched the reformed villain. They botched the damsel in distress. They botched the strong female character. And they botched childhood friends. Right off the bat. That's like not even delving into like later seasons or anything. But first of all, reformed villain. Who's the reformed villain? They did it good. They did a good one with Gaara. I think reformed villain with Gaara was a great reformed villain. Their long arching storyline of reforming Sasuke was botched. And it's because Gaara had to make the choice. Well, his storyline and his details were different. The reason why I think Gaara's reform storyline worked was because if you look at his past, everything was forced onto him. He was forced to become a Jinchuriki. He was forced to kill on behalf of the village, and then he was forced to kill others in defense of himself. So there was all that. So he grew up in a very violent setting. And then when he saw that there was someone else who was like him, had a demon locked inside of them, and had a different lifestyle, then he realized, oh, there's a different option. Now I'm going to take that option. Thus, his reforming the villain storyline occurred. Now with Sasuke, his storyline to becoming a villain was a choice. He chose to become a villain. You can say it's not fair. His clan was slaughtered, and he thought it was his brother and whatnot. Yes, he did. And at first, he didn't choose the villain route. He just was like, he took the revenge trope direction. He just said, I want to take out my brother as revenge for my family. But then in that, he had a choice to either get power in the good way with friends or get power in the wrong way. And he chose the wrong way. He was never influenced. He was influenced to always make the right choice. Whereas Gaara was always influenced to make the wrong choice. And that's the difference of it. That's where Sasuke's reformed villain arc isn't a reformed villain. He just became a villain and then was excused for everything he did as a villain. And that's why it makes me not like his character a lot, because I would have liked his character if he had stayed the villain. It's just the fact that when all was said and done, everyone still loved him after everything he did. And here's the thing too, like, reformed villain, you have to think about it. That's are you willing to excuse this person and all the decisions they made? But like, think about it. Did they make decisions because they didn't have a choice, or did they make that decision fully knowing that they could have made a different one, but they chose the poopy one? That's the character that you like. They also did no justice to damsel in distress, because they paired the strong female character with the damsel in distress trope. And I hate that, because strong female character has slowly turned into a cliche, because now they're just kind of there and they're considered one note. They're considered the Mary Sues, where they don't really have any weaknesses. And it was, the thing is, the strong female character trope was supposed to be in direct conflict and contradiction to the damsel in distress, because in olden stories you always had a girl who had to be rescued. That was like the token for any hero story. Then they're like, why does it have to be a girl? Because sexism is no longer a thing. So we're going to make a strong female character. But then that was it. She was just strong. And then she became strong and emotionless. And then she became strong and only focused on saving the day and didn't care about everything else. Or she just was like willing to do the hard thing, and it was really hard to relate to her. So then you turned the strong female character into someone annoying as well. But then for some reason they'd always have a really strong weakness. Like, the strong female character always have a weakness. They did that to Sakura. She's a strong female character. She had her moments where she broke away. She had her moments where she broke the mold, and then they pushed her back to being weak. And it was really quite annoying. They pushed her back into damsel in distress when it kind of didn't make sense for her to be a damsel in distress, considering how strong and intelligent she was. So it just kind of made you resent her character. Which, I get that. As someone who is a Sakura stan and like understands that people call her trash, I get why people call her trash, because that's super freaking annoying. You're like, with all that training, and that's where you did that. And then childhood friends. Like, I hate they use childhood friends to, again, excuse Sasuke. They allowed Sakura and Naruto to use their history with Sasuke to excuse him of everything he did. And that was a poor use of that trope. So that's why I put Naruto in the didn't do hero saves the world very well. And it's because the other tropes that they paired with his storyline made it so that, like, I love Naruto and I think he's a great hero. But if I had to choose like an objective hero, like if I had a choice of which hero would save me or like save the world today, and I have this lineup of all my favorite heroes, and Naruto's over there and he's like, pick me, and I'm like, no, because if it came down to it, I think you would pick your friends over saving the world. And I know you'd pick your friends over saving me. Like, if I'm the person that needs to be saved, if Sasuke needs you more than I do, hands down, you would choose him all the time, every other time. Even if choosing him meant not accomplishing the saving of the world. So he's in that bad genre, and I know it's hard. It's hard because I love Naruto. What I also put in that category is, oh, Trini's right. They did do that to Asuna. Sword Art just has so many issues. I was gonna put Sword Art on here just for Trin Bean because it has so many issues, but that like would require its own episode. Which I'm already realizing this is gonna be a multi-part episode, because today is going to be a shorter episode day, and I'm already running out of time because I'm not even getting to the ones that I like. But we'll probably do a couple more of these. Another one that I put in there is Batman. That didn't do it well. And here's the thing. If you know me, you know my favorite hero is Tim Drake. And I love the Bat family. And it's not even that I love Tim Drake. I love the entire Batman comic book. Tim Drake's my favorite hero. Cassandra Cain is my favorite heroine and also my favorite Batgirl, but I also love Stephanie Brown, and I recently just realized I really like Jason Todd, and I don't like Dick Grayson, but I'll tolerate him, and I don't like Damian, but I'll tolerate him. I'm starting to tolerate those two. I love, Lucius Fox, and I love Catwoman. I love Kate Kane, Batwoman. I love Terry McGinnis and whatnot. So the whole Bat family. But Batman does fall under the bad side of hero saves the world and reluctant hero because of a trope that they put on him that they use as his catch-all, and it just doesn't work in comparison to the other DC titles, which is the trope of dead or absent parents. And here's the thing. That's Pixar's favorite thing to do, is dead or absent parents. We know this. And it still makes a good story. But the problem with Batman is kind of like, I think he's very similar to Sasuke in this, is where his character cleaves to this one notion that fuels everything that they do. And that would work, but they're not the only one that's dealing with that. And there are other characters that are dealing with those losses and not making these terrible decisions. So it's just like, what gives you the excuse? So in Naruto, Sasuke lost his whole clan. He's not the only one who lost a lot of loved ones in a horrible way. Like, Naruto was an orphan. And on top of that, the village treated him like crap. So, and Sasuke, you're not the only one who's losing people left and right. Because like Kakashi's story is kind of pretty hard. And so is Tsunade's, and they're adults. And you're like a kid. And so they've seen a lot. Yeah? And then same with Batman. I'm like, Batman, yeah, you lost your parents, but like, you know, you also have Green Arrow there, and you have Black Canary, and you have Jessica Jones, and you have Luke Cage. Well, and you also have Matt Murdock, and that's Marvel. I just went to Marvel, all of them. All of them are Marvel. Oops. In Batman, you have Green Arrow. Green Arrow's like him. Wonder Woman, I mean, she didn't lose any women. Superman, kind of, in the later ones. But then you also have, like, Martian Manhunter, who had to deal with his entire... They weren't slaughtered, but he had to deal with, like, an apartheid on Mars and whatnot. And then you also have Hawkman, Hawkeye, I don't even know his name. The Hawk. I think his name's Hawk. But, like, the thing is, Batman wasn't the only one who lost someone. Especially within the Bat family. Like, Dick Grayson lost his family, too. And he was the light to Batman's dark. Which was the whole reason why Batman had a sidekick in the first place. Was someone to show the purity against his, like, brooding darkness. And then you also had Jason Todd, who was just an orphan. You also had Tim Drake, who had a loving father and then lost him because he chose to be a Robin. And you had Stephanie Brown, who was trying to fight against her villain father. And then you also had Cass Kane, who was raised by the League of Shadows. So you, like, have all these storylines of these other characters within this, you know, continuity with you that had just as bad. And, like, I know they're not comparable, but at the same time, you losing your parents in the alley can't be the reason why you're so closed off, or why you're so aggressive, or why you use people like Selena Kyle and Talia al Ghul. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, and I like Batman. I like that aspect of Batman. And then the worst at being Hero Saves the World, the worst storyline is Dragon Ball Z. And Dragon Ball, because Goku's an idiot. Because half the time, the only reason he's saving the world is because it's his fault. And that's the worst use of Hero Saves the World. Because honestly, if he just sat down and didn't say anything, 100% of the time things would have been fine. But Goku would start everything always. He would bring people over, or he would just provoke the people, and like, it was just him, you know, just whoever could show their greatest masculinity in 0.25 seconds. It was just so bad. And that's just what Dragon Ball Z is. It's just a big pissing contest. So they don't even do the genre well. And I love Dragon Ball Z. Hey, he's a deadbeat dad too. Yes. And so it's sad. It's sad because I really love Dragon Ball. And they did the genre really poorly. Anyways, I'm going to do a part 2 because my next trope that I was going to talk about is one of my favorite romantic tropes, which is friends to lovers and enemies to lovers. because we could talk about that for days, and there's so many stories I want to share with you. But hopefully that will entice you to come back next week when I change my time well, to not Wednesdays. So this is part 1 of Tropes, Themes, and the Story in Between. Next week we're going to deal into the relationship side, which I really love. I love romance storylines, and I like them when they're coupled with other tropes and themes. And 2 of my favorites, which is friends to lovers and enemies to lovers, is what I want to talk about next week. And then also with the bad side of enemies to lovers, because I think people forget that sometimes, even though it's good for a story, like that's also not what you want in real life. Like you don't want to be with a serial killer. I'm just going to put that out there. Yeah. Don't be the next true crime documentary. But we'll do that next week. I will not be doing it on Wednesdays. I am moving to Thursdays. Why? Because my work schedule is not giving me Wednesdays anymore. So we are going to be back here, Beyond the Northern Wall, episode 5, part 2 of Tropes, Themes, and the Story Between. We next week on Thursday at 7:30 p.m. So Thursday. Follow us on Instagram and right here on TikTok and right here on YouTube. It'll be all scheduled for you guys to see. It'll be happening on Thursday. Now, before I leave, really quickly, I want to share with you guys. We are doing a GoFundMe fundraiser. You guys can't see it here on TikTok. For return of anime on stage with the core. The core is going back on stage. And we're bringing some amazing pieces. We're bringing back our Plus Ultra remix set. So if you saw Plus Ultra at ALA, that was super awesome. If you saw Plus Ultra remix at LACC, that was only a taste of what we were going to do. We're bringing it back, adding more things, and we're going to take it to the stage this summer. We're also bringing a brand new 1-hour-long production called Bishojo, which celebrates female anime characters, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all on stage with live music and collaborations with other dance companies. But we need your help because the pandemic hit everyone hard. So just go to the description. The link is down there for our GoFundMe. If you're here on TikTok, you can go on our Instagram and the link is there. Please share if you guys can. We would appreciate it if you could always donut. If you could donut. Could you donut? I could donut. If you could donate to the core, of course, that's amazing. If you can't, no worries. Everyone has their things that they have to worry about. But we do ask that you help us share and get the word out. Send it to your community, your anime community, and say that, hey, there's this cosplay group that we do everything for the love of the art and the nerd in our heart. Nothing is for profit, so we need your help to get back into the stage. We'll be able to announce where we'll be performing very, very soon. As of right now, we can't. So hopefully. Once again, the link is in the description for this YouTube video, and please share it. Other than that, we have all of our normal affiliates and everything. I usually show them at the end of this live, but I have to get to an event just right now, which is why I'm all fixed up. So thank you so much for coming for this live. I appreciate you all. I will see you next week. I know, I'm so sorry, Maya. I'm working Wednesdays now, so I'm only free on Thursdays. So I'll see you all next week, Thursday. We'll be continuing with Tropes, Themes, and the Story in Between, talking about our favorite friends to lovers and enemies to lovers. For that one, I will be reaching out to everyone in the chat to tell me your favorites, and we'll see why they're your favorites. And maybe we'll kind of analyze them and see, like, is it something that is like a telling notion about you, or do you just have really good taste? Once again, this is all just my opinion. Thanks for stopping by. You guys are amazing. Thank you, Trinbean and Maya and Rocky, and I can't see who else was in the chat that was Corsman or patron, but you're all great. Thank you, everyone here on TikTok. We're going to call it out. What you do is you say Sotomato on 3. Make sure you salute first. Here we go. Sotomato on 3. 1, 2, 3. Sotomato! I'm going to finish my drink, and if you want the recipe, join us on Patreon. Yay! Y'all have a great day. Peace out. A-Town. Damn. Boom, boom.